Please.
Thank you. What can I say before I faint? Thank you very much. These guys are always setting me up, and I just have to say they want me to be the epitome of productivity so that we all have lunch very soon. So I'm going to do my job here. I hope it's going to work. Let's see if this works. Oops. Okay. So what I'm going to do today is, besides recapping what my illustrious predecessors, speakers, walked you through, I'm going to emphasize a few of the properties of blockchain, which are only setting the stage for me to explain to you the work which some amazing companies are doing, which are featured here and which I will introduce. So first of all, blockchain, what it is and why. What I have to tell you is that, in my opinion, the internet as we know it has suffered a radical mutation. And this mutation is enabling us, besides sharing information, like if I want to send a copy of the same file to all of you, I can. But on the internet of information, if I want to send to all of you the same dollar, also, I can. Right? That's why we need the banks to account for that, and so on and so forth. What the blockchain does, it enables that kind of accounting without a central organization, without a central institution. That's why we can't call it as well the Internet of Transactions. But it's not only money that it enables to account for, but also deeds and, of course, stock certificates and property, as it was mentioned before. So we can look at this as the Internet of Value. And this Internet of Value can help us to clean the mess, as it was saying, as our colleague said before, to clean the mess that the Internet of Information forced us to do in clearing settlements and so on between different parties and organizations. I will give you an example which may be painful, but I'm sure maybe some of you know. Actually, there's a chain of examples with history here of how billions are simply lost in cumbersome procurement bureaucracies. So the latest one, who doesn't know about this, which surfaced in March? Would you like to raise your hands? Who doesn't know about this? Okay. So you are very well aware that 800 million simply disappeared from the Pentagon. So that's why Jose's love for the blockchain cannot be not understood. And this is, as I mentioned, history, because it repeats itself all over again. What I have to say in this regard, however, as a citizen who is preparing its taxes, which in 10 days are due, I'm accounting for every penny I earned and for every penny I spent in order to report, is the clemency with which we look over such, claims. So, and understandably so, because with the infrastructure which is used so far, such a huge endeavor is practically impossible to manage. And here I am to tell you all that there are no more excuses for actually looking with clemency over such losses, because we have now a technology that can support us to account for every penny in a very accountable manner and effortless, and that is the blockchain. Shared truth was mentioned here, and shared truth among all the participants. So who owns the blockchain? Those who share the truth, the participants in the particular blockchain. And the blockchain has not only shared truth with regard to the data, but it is also provable that no data can be tampered with. How is this done? Is because, in fact, the blockchain is a linked list of transactions where every block is represented through a code, which is cryptographically encrypted, which probably most of you know here. However, what is important is that in the transactions, and the laser pointer is not working, but in the middle block, you will find the code of the first block, and in the last block you will find the code of both the previous blocks. So it is impossible to practically mess with the data which is stored in the blockchain. This ensures immutability and verifiability. So if I have a chain of transactions represented on the blockchain through their codes, as you see there, and I try to modify the data in the middle block, this will be immediately detected, and that modification will not be accepted. And I will come back to this very soon. So the blockchain is, how can I call it, a distributed transaction recorder, which is written in stone. So those transactions are practically immutable, written in stone, and they have more properties, such as digital timestamps. They can act like a notary, so which gives traceability to the blockchain. So everything what is there has the time when it was recorded. So I can go back and look and account for things in a natural manner. And all such properties are actually embedded in the fabric of the blockchain. So the blockchain is practically, if you want, in this regard, it is a ledger that can be accessible from everywhere in the world if I have an open blockchain, or by all the participants in the blockchain if I have a private one. But I am calling it the worldwide ledger because where it started with the Bitcoin blockchain, that's what it was and that's what it is. But this worldwide ledger has the procedural trust embedded in its fabric. However, there's one more property which is very important, which I didn't talk about, and that is the consensus. So in order to store any transaction, so if I want to send to Alexander $1, and I want to simply store the transaction on the blockchain, I cannot do it by myself. I will need this transaction 4, will go to all the nodes. And when it reaches the agreement of the majority of nodes, so then it will be adopted automatically by all the others. This is very important, of course. However, here I have to pause, and Caitlin, I don't know if you are still here, but I want to salute Wyoming. What I have to say here, and I am citing my colleague Caroline, who I hope is here. Can you stand up, please, Caroline? Okay, great, yes. So please go to her in the lunch break, because she has scanned the territory here, and the conclusion is pretty grim. We do not have consensus in this country when it comes to regulation on the blockchain. Wyoming is very good, though. Yeah, so congratulations, Caitlin, for your efforts. So just a few states. And what I have to say here about the companies which I'm going to talk to you about, one of them just left the US. They were the only ones who dared to set foot here and to set their tent here. However, they just left. This is another slide which comes from Caroline and Switchbridge. There are trillions of dollars locked up in the messiness of the procurement processes and of the supply chains. And it is time for us to adopt blockchain as a system of record in order to save those bucks in a very, very natural and simple way. It's a no-brainer. So the properties of immutability, verifiability, traceability, validation, and consensus are these embedded properties in the fabric of this new internet, new mutated internet, are offering a lot. But besides this, it was spoken here about RPAs and so on and so forth. And this on blockchain look like something called smart contracts. In a normal contract, on let's say paper contract, you would need a third party to enforce the contract if you do not trust the other person. So if the person defaults, there is a bank or a lawyer who can force this person or punish them if they do not fulfill their obligations. A smart contract transmits that into code in the form of if, let's say, if Mihaela fulfills obligation 1 and 2 and 3, then Alexander is going to pay her. Period. As simple as that. And this is written in code, and on blockchain, this is executable code, so there's no negotiation. Yes, so Alexander cannot change his mind. Once I fulfill, and it is determined like that condition is fulfilled, the payment comes automatically. So both me and Alexander can sleep at peace and not worry about lawyers, not pay them, and so on and so forth. So they are intermediated. Sorry, Caroline, but we will need you for other things. Okay. But this, yes, can be applicable to many more things. And here is the automation which was mentioned by my colleague previously, the Internet of Things, as we call it, which enables a lot of stuff to be done. For example, trucks can be summoned automatically when the particular weight of fruit collected is reached, then the truck will be summoned, then the truck can, through its when it reaches, let's say, Walmart, can be paid automatically in the supply chain. And there are many spots in the supply chain where these smart contracts can be very useful to automate things and free us from the headaches which we have today with the paper and the messiness. So now that I introduced briefly, or actually I did not introduce, but I recapped from what my previous speakers have spoken, I would like to discuss about how actually a few pioneers are addressing hard challenges with the blockchain. I will start with Bitlumens and then with Sapien. And then I will continue with the enablers, Endor and Espresso. So you know, of course, one of the hardest challenges in the world is that most of the population on our planet does not live sustainable lives. And how can we actually do the transition to a sustainable life? We've been struggling with this for a long time. The Sustainable Development Goals are, of course, still there and they are desirable, but it is very hard to address them. So one of the startups which are here, and then if you are here, if you want to stand so people can see you and can come to you then Heller is here, who is the CFO of the company. Bitlumens is using blockchain to bring electricity and water to unbanked women while obviously addressing the Sustainable Development Goals. In Latin America, as Mr. Ketterer mentioned, so there are many problems, not only with identity and not only with this clearings and other things. People are unbanked, but people do not actually have electricity. And this is a very hard problem to solve. I was 3 years ago talking to the power minister of Nigeria, and I sensed tears in his eyes and also in mine because I couldn't help. He told me there are more than 80% of his people are living without electricity, but they have a lot of sun, and he didn't see a way in which they could actually purchase the solar panels and how to help these people. Well, now, Veronica Garcia, who is the CEO of Bitlumens, has found a way, and I'm just so happy because I've been thinking about this problem. So the blockchain, she is using blockchain to actually provide rural communities a way to move away from the unsustainable ways of living, where they use kerosene or deforestation in order to simply heat the water with which they wash themselves, or elementary tasks. And I'm not sure if you've ever been through a power outage in winter. I lived in Canada for a while, and I've done this. And it was really, 1 week was like the most terrible time of my life. And these people, that's how they live all their lives. So reading at candlelight or writing with the gloves when you have an exam, it's pretty terrible. So I understand them, and maybe many of you will try to understand. So here is Veronica, I would say, or one of her agents, bringing to these single mothers in Latin America the devices. About 1,000 devices have been distributed in Guatemala in this project, and installing the simple solar panels on their homes. How is this possible, and what does a blockchain bring that Nigeria didn't have at the time when I was thinking how to solve it with the power minister? So the blockchain gives these billion women an identity based on which they can we can actually calculate their credit scores, much in the same manner in which you heard before in the examples. Moreover, the women can own their own data, and in exchange for the data, based on which we can calculate their credit score, they receive tokens with which they can pay for the devices. Also from the electricity, obviously, which they are using to water the plants and so on, and then they can sell those produce, they can make money. However, what is more important is that they also receive some credits, like sort of carbon credits for their good behavior. Because if they do not pollute or if they do not cut the trees anymore, they are credited for that as well. So an economic model, a microeconomics, is being created on the blockchain in this case. A microeconomics which was not possible before without blockchain because it could not account for such behaviors. So there are many innovations that can actually spring on the blockchain. And I think then maybe we'll be able to tell you how the rules are actually built into digital contracts in a manner in which the governance of all this enterprise is done automatically. We call it algorithmic governance. So this mutation of the blockchain with smart contracts is enabling a lot of miraculous things to happen just by themselves because the rules are embedded in the network. And the effect at scale is really major. So I'm not talking only about the social network operating system in which smart contracts on blockchain is bringing people together. And someone was mentioning this morning about how do I build a city from the ground up. Well, with such communities, I can enable them to exchange. For example, if they have more electricity, they can sell it to the neighbor. And they can do a lot of other things. And the incentive layer there is very important. But if you combine this together with the Internet of Things, which is there at the bottom, so you have practically the blockchain-enabled Internet, and then you have, you have the things there, the economy of things. So you build an economy of things and an economy of people, which can help us with the microeconomics in much the same manner as I described before. It can help us elevate people from poverty and solve and address many challenges on our planet. One thing, and look at the incentive layer, which this social network operating system enables. And I'm going to move now on to Sapien, not Sapient, which Alexander is from, but Sapien. So if you want guys to just stand up, Ankit and team, so they stand up so they see you. Okay, don't be so modest. They are actually taking on Facebook. That's quite interesting. So they are the fake news-less Facebook. We all know, yeah, and this was mentioned here, how the centralized platforms are actually becoming more and more of an inconvenience for us and how they are preying on our data. So is the blockchain able, and this mutated internet, able to cure us from such ills with which we struggle? And it turns out that yes, Sapien has found a way to do this. And it is through a reputation engine, a proof of value engine, which keeps track of misinformation and also elevates the quality information. And they are here exhibiting at the lunchtime. They can tell you more about their complex or maybe not so complex reputation engine. So Facebook problem has been solved. What's next? Cambridge Analytica, right? Well, we are solving that as well at Endor. So Facebook without fake news, how about a Cambridge Analytica which does not prey on people's data? And that is Endor, which is an analytics company which works through blockchain, enabling everybody to have their own data and keeping track of their identities and data. They are strongly disrupting big data in a manner which the Thomson Reuters speaker mentioned that we are complicated, and I must agree that probably we are, but not as complicated as maybe he left you believe, because there are certain behaviors which we all have in common. And social physics, which is a science from MIT, has determined that just like gravity always works, also we behave in a certain way under certain circumstances. So we are more predictable than we think. And they have created this social sphere, which if we match with the behavior of everyone, it can result in forecasting that behavior much faster than any machine learning algorithm. So it's a new science, also working on blockchain. which is now available to everyone at 1% of the cost because of the blockchain. So how are they doing that? So they practically are disrupting big data, because the mom and pop firms can now use a very powerful prediction engine, which only the Googles of the world could use before, in order to ask questions such as, how many products should I have in my little store, because the demand will be X and Y. So they can ask such questions, which they were not possible to be empowered with before. And also individuals can ask such questions. And thank you, Alexander, for your image initially. Here is exactly the innovation which Alexander was talking about, and the disruption which Endor is bringing. And Mircea, are you here? So he is here at the same table with Sapien to tell you more in the break about how they are doing that. Moreover, why 1% of the cost? Because the algorithms can be, can be created by everyone. And people can contribute to the improvement of the algorithms, and they can receive tokens by which they can further use to answer questions from the engine. So it's a very interesting microeconomics on that. And last but not least, it's been talked about here how difficult it may be to implement blockchain technologies. Espresso is here, and where are you, Remy? Okay, here we are. Espresso is here, and he is the CEO, just arrived from China, so be kind with him, to tell you how actually they can ease the deployment of blockchain, but moreover, it was talked about data off-chain and on-chain. They have found a solution to that problem, how to process big data which is off-chain in a secure manner and how to solve. So that's the problem which they are solving, including using the way through the deployment of blockchain. If you are interested in deployment, quickly go to him. And I'd like to end, but I must say I got inspiration from my previous speaker, with a song, of course. So I am a singer. If you want, I can also dance, so you remember me. But anyway, I'm going to stop at singing because he kind of stole the show, so I have to have a strong comeback here. And my song will be, let's see. We all look at the dark side of life. So it's dark, not bright, yes? Because the way in which we are looking at blockchain is really very negative. And this is again a slide from Caroline. She is here. You can approach her. This is how we're looking at it. And my call to action will be to all of you also with a song. And that is, we all should look at the bright side of the blockchain. I hope you will remember this. I can even dance just to make you remember this, please, and thank you very much. I'm here, and these wizards are also here at lunchtime to tell you a few things.